Hello, welcome back. I'm your favorite disengaged employee at every level. I'm back on YouTube. And if you're listening, you're like, I don't know the difference, lady. And that's okay. But I will link out to my YouTube page, the Engagement Academy official YouTube page, because I used to have a growing YouTube page with a software company that I used to represent. So I am recreating the wheel here a little bit, but now I get to do it as just me and have full permission to be myself. I'll link out to my old YouTube channel too if you want to see a time capsule of my mental health as my hair changes. Anyway, listen, I know we're talking a lot about surveys if you're listening in real time. This has been like back to back to back. Every episode's very different. But once I get on the topic of surveys, it's really hard for me to get off because there's so much to cover that's important to remember that isn't talked about anywhere else. So just know that Christy Williams is coming on after the holidays. We're going to talk about cadence because we have two different perspectives. She and I were chit-chatting on the phone one day and I was like, stop, this has to be a podcast episode. And we came up with a POV on per your company size when you should be sending surveys. So she's going to come on. I promised you an episode about cadence. That's coming. Yes. Today, though, I want to talk about, I'm rounding out the survey tips. I'll always add more as time goes on. We're going to get into onboarding and performance reviews and exit interviews and, training your managers. But when I'm in the lane of surveys, it sounds like pedal to the metal, like, this is my favorite thing to talk about because it's so important. Today, what I want to cover as we're rounding out surveys is some tips to get employees to take them. Over the years, I've helped so many companies get clear on this, and I've been talking about it ad nauseum. And I think it's just a good reminder as time goes on, I get more clarity on exactly how to explain this to you. I see companies make the same mistakes over and over and over again, which tells me there's a pattern and there's a gap in training and in the content out there. So here I am to fill in those gaps. Here we go. If you want employees to take your surveys, we're going to run through some tips. First and foremost, you need to get executive buy-in. And that means basically cutting through the fluff with your main executive, whether it's your CEO or your CHRO, like, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. Are you with me? Do you like revenue? Do you like growth? Do you like thinking about the long-term future of the company? Me too. You kind of need to get permission to do your job sometimes, which is a little embarrassing. I know. But it's a really important first step because I see a lot of HR leaders not get total buy-in on this, on why negative employee feedback is what drives revenue, because you're optimizing your employee experience against what the revenue drivers get in the way of doing their best work, talking to your customers, making your product, supporting your product, selling your product, marketing your product, being customer facing. You got to talk to your revenue drivers, am I right? I know you know this, but if you don't really get them at least curious about where you're going with this, that these are insights that the business needs, and you'll take my training in Engagement Academy to do it right, it's going to be really hard for you to get into your feedback loop. Because my point of view is there's no reason you can't send a survey every month, and there's no such thing as survey fatigue when you do it right. There is reckless survey sending, but you need to get your executives on board. And I have a script and a template for you in the community, but it has a lot to do with speaking revenue and getting them to perk up. Yes, you're talking about money, but you're also talking about people. So your little gift of empathy is not dead or gone just because you're talking about money. You are explaining that they're one and the same. In order for the people to be okay, we need to send surveys, which will also unlock more revenue and a brighter future for the business. So you got to get your executives on board. Otherwise, they will block you from sending future surveys. And they'll say, oh, you're sending too many surveys, or you just sent a survey, or what are you even hoping to learn? You're just going to get everyone all stirred up. I've heard executives tell me a lot of this, and I've had to pull the spooked horse out of the stable. Like, come on, little friend. I know you like money. I know you think this is not how this works. Let me explain to you why it's exactly the way it works. So get executive buy-in. Otherwise, it'll bite you later. Next up, to get employees to take your surveys is to own the baggage of their experience at past companies that sent surveys. It's not your fault. I know in working in HR, you inherit a lot of fires and baggage that you didn't create. That's just kind of the nature of the job. But We've been burned at other companies. So it's a really good idea when you send out a survey to say for, your new hires who maybe aren't used to the survey sending process, or you're saying it the first time. You say, look, I know at past companies, the survey experience may not have been great for you. Either they didn't do anything with the information or they didn't do the right things and you didn't really see big impact. But that's not how we're going to handle it. We take this very seriously. That's not your baggage to have to own, but just like someone getting into a new relationship who's like, oh, I've not been treated the best in the past. The new partner, for it to work, has to be like, I'm different. I understand. I'm not going to do that to you. And you cross your fingers and hope to die that they're not lying to you. But owning the baggage of a past company or a past career of surveys not going great is something that your employees would really appreciate. Like a lot. That's like very authentic. Another way is to make sure you're getting clear on how you're explaining it. If you're talking to employees, you say, we're sending a survey to figure out what's getting in the way of you doing your best work. To managers, you say, we're sending a survey to give you more productive teams. We're going to find moments of the daily employee experience where teams need more support, and we're excited to learn what those moments are. That's what managers care about. And to executives, you're like, we need these insights in order to figure out what's getting in the way of the revenue drivers being able to drive more revenue. They also have a lot more insights into the business than we think they do because they're talking to customers and building the stuff and selling it all day. They have helpful stuff to tell us. So don't just tell people, hey, I'm sending a survey. Take it because I said so. That's not how human psychology works. You need to pay attention to who you're talking to and what do they care about. That might feel inauthentic, but you're always talking about the same stuff because taking great care of the people unlocks more productivity, creates better customer interactions, and makes the company more money. That's like saying hi, hello, hola. And I don't know how to say hi in a fourth language. I think my French and German teachers in high school would be very disappointed. But those all mean the same thing. You're just saying it in a different way. Another way to get employees to take your surveys is to share midway participation rates. We all have like a competitive edge a little bit. So when you tell us, oh man, 56% of you have taken the survey, remember it's anonymous. So I'm just doing simple math here on the amount of submissions I've received versus how many of you there are. Always drive it home that it's anonymous. Always, always, always. And it should be. But you'll tap into our competitive side if you gamify it. And if you're like, hey, I'd love to see this get up higher. You don't have to bribe us to take the survey. Just share the stat. Because sometimes we actually do forget. That's what leads us perfectly into our next tip. You should find creative ways to remind everybody at least 3 to 5 times outside of when you talked about it at your all hands or your town hall. So anytime you can send a Slack message with a silly GIF or send us an email, have our managers remind us, record a goofy video with you or your CEO if they have any sense of humor or human aspect qualities they could still tap into. Find a way to make it engaging. You don't have to go pull out all the stops. We would laugh at like a goofy video of you making a rap using ChatGPT about surveys. Shout out to one of my community members, Emily Granholm. I'll link out to her in the show notes. She's one of my favorite members. I should not say that. I love all my members equally. But Emily's that really creative HR leader, and she creates content at her company. She makes manufacturing exciting, which I think is a gift from God herself. But anything you can do to make it entertaining and not just like, do it. But sometimes like I actually would forget and would appreciate the nudge in Slack or Teams or get your email with your video or have my manager remind me. People need to, we're busy too. We're still learning to trust the process. So if you can remind us as many times as possible, 3 to 5 times should be enough. That will help drive participation. Sounds simple, but we're not sick of hearing from you and we forget to take it. I kind of mentioned this one, but also have your managers remind your employees in their one-on-ones. I know that sounds silly, but your managers are an extension of you. You can't drive engagement by yourself. It's impossible. Your managers spend time with the team every day. Even if they're remote, they have a lot more interactions with their people. So asking them to bring it up organically in one-on-ones and sometimes it's helpful to hear our managers say, yeah, take the survey. They're doing it for us. It's in our best interest to take it. Otherwise, they don't know how to make optimizations to our budget or our tech stack, or, that's a great chance to say that the all hands is too long, like you tell me in our one-on-one. But when our manager gives us permission, it feels safe too. That's a good thing. Sometimes we have things to say about our manager, but we really like our manager, or we don't. That's also common. And then the last tip to get employees to take your surveys is to get them to take it next time. So even if participation stunk, maybe you had 30% participation. If you go over the negative results in your all hands and say, we learned that you all think there's too many meetings, you are frustrated at the new benefits, the few people who did participate are going to get the dopamine reward that, oh my gosh, they're taking this seriously. And the people who didn't take it are going to say, shoot, I see that they take this seriously. I should take this next time. And this is really cool that they're actually owning what we said. You don't need to keep everything all positive and roses, even in the face of much disengagement, and say, thank you for telling us that these were common issues for you. We heard you. Don't gloss over it and say, oh, we are doing manager training or we are doing a meeting training. Own the dark first and then tell us what you're going to do about it. So we'll get into that's more real. We're not mad at you. In fact, we think it's really cool when you're honest and when you say, oh my gosh, so many of you said there's too many meetings. Thank you. We're doing a training on how to know if something is supposed to be a meeting or an email or start asynchronously as a document. But getting really real in your all hands or your town hall is a great way to get employees to take your survey next time who didn't this last time. Those are some ways to be thinking about how to get employees to take surveys. And I know how busy you are. I know how hard it is. I know you're doing payroll, compliance, policies, benefits, hiring, firing. You're like pulled in so many different directions just with employee interruptions alone. It's not always easy to make sure that the survey gets high participation, but hopefully some of these tips just gave you something to keep in mind for next time. And I promise you they work because this was given to you by a disengaged employee who really wished this would have been my experience. Also, I help companies do it now, which is super fun for me. If you need help with your surveys, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you untangle all your negative employee feedback, and I can do it pretty quickly too. And until then, I hope if you're listening in real time, you have a very happy holiday. And I will see you next week. Bye.